Okay. Uh-oh.
I knew there would be risks involved when working with a water-cooled machine for my main production station. Whenever you have to swap something out, it's not a simple procedure. Don't get me wrong, it was a fantastic learning experience. It was super fun working with Hans Peter and Corsair on my HydroX system. But whenever I experienced any hardware issues, it wasn't a simple fix. Many times I've had IQ just completely stop working as it should, so all the fan RPM would be completely out of bounds to what I said. All the lighting would be completely all over the place, and this is not something I want to deal with when I'm working on an edit. It's deadline time. I want something stable. The clogging of the blocks, and because they're transparent, all that stuff is visible. Really, the main challenge here was with hardline tubing was the fact that I was receiving so many blue screens of death every single day while editing and while working that I couldn't just swap out the GPU. I couldn't just tinker with the hardware to figure out what was the problem, because that would require so much extra downtime. So I want to go back to the basics. Simple air cooling, no riser cables, just a complete GPU in the motherboard, CPU tower, and we're good to go. I'm still sticking with AMD, really proud of that for my production stuff, but now with the new X570 platform and a Ryzen 5800X. Which, by the way, the 5800X is regularly restocked and is available to purchase right now, and all the items you can buy will be listed down below. So come along this journey with me. Let's rebuild my editing machine, reuse some components because everything is kind of crazy right now in terms of components availability, and keep it simple. The Xtrfy M42 RGB, what a fun mouse with 5 colorways, lightweight frame at just 59 grams with the swappable backplate to suit your grip style, the sensor, the easy cord, the smooth skates, and driverless control for RGB and DPI is why you should check out the M42 RGB down below.
Hello. Damn. Damn. Oh. Wow, I've never seen brushed aluminum on a power supply before. Cool. All right, there she goes. All right. Okay. Uh-oh.
Now you guys saw how much time it took to swap out the graphics card from the water-cooled machine, right? That amount of time, it took me the exact same amount of time to actually build this whole new machine. So imagine needing to swap out the CPU cooler, swap out storage, or just access the GPU for some reason, or do more cable management, like swap out maybe new color cables, right? So that is the reason why I'm leaving water cooling and going back on air for simplicity's sake. Also, big thanks to all the partners and Be Quiet for supporting us on this project. Very happy with the system upgrade. And so, good people, the machine is finished. I wanted to follow a clean white and black color scheme with a little spice of color via those custom cables from Cable Mod. You know, if you can't buy a GPU, I might as well buy pretty cables for one, right? They also have built-in cable combs, which is so extra. I set the illumination of all my hardware to light blue, looks fantastic. And let's be honest, we all know the 5800X is one hot Ryzen because of its core layout and the amount of voltage AMD is feeding into it. So that brings me to this, the Shadow Rock 3. But in white. So it's well priced, fits the theme perfectly, requires none of the maintenance that I was experiencing with my water cooling machine, and most importantly, it cools the CPU super well at a lot lower noise levels than most all-in-one coolers, at least in my own workflow. But having said that, I don't push the hardware for the editing machine to its max. It doesn't need to be. Resolve uses the GPU just fine, which is why the 2080 Ti is so important in this build. I wanted to reuse it. It's a fantastic GPU, even though it's, you know, fairly old, multiple years old now. And while on water, I was hitting 2 GHz, no problem with the frequencies on the 2080 Ti. Again, it was something cool to experiment with, to try it out, how does it work, but I don't need it for Resolve. I just want it to be stable without any crashes whatsoever, because the downtime on the Threadripper machine that I experienced was just unpleasant and not something that I'm looking forward to. Hopefully, it's the exact opposite with this new Be Quiet machine. The case here is the Silent Base 802, large, roomy, and super quiet out of the box. I even wanted to install these white Shadow Wings fans to match the color theme, both for the CPU heatsink and replace the 140mm fans on the case, but they all have slightly lower RPM, and I wanted to leave a little bit of headroom for maximum airflow if needed, especially since I'm running the solid front panel instead of the included mesh to eliminate any noise. And I also appreciate the physical fan control. This is something that I normally go into tinker with the software, make sure my curve is adjusted based on CPU temperature, but here it's kind of cool. I have the little adjustment. I can go low, medium, high, depending on what I'm doing, and obviously auto if you have this connected to a PWM controller. Now the power supply. That's probably the most overkill thing in the system. Are they even legal at 1500 watts? But jokes aside, I had this available from AdSpots and decided to use it here. Now the irony behind this machine was to build it so I avoid headaches in the future of downtime. But the motherboard, the X570 from ASUS, arrived without a proper BIOS to support a 5000 series CPU. Luckily, I had a 3000 series Ryzen CPU in a separate machine that I swapped out, inserted into the X570 motherboard, updated the BIOS, and only then was I able to populate back the 5800X and boot up this machine. One of the reasons why I wanted this X570 platform is because of the Gen 4 storage, which I want for all my production stuff. Like, this drive is absolutely insane. But another disappointment with this X570 motherboard is that it does not have an internal USB-C front panel connector. So that's kind of wasted on the enclosure. Now, just to tease us, my gosh, I wasn't even going to bring this up, but ASUS sent me an RTX 3080 in white, which would have been a perfect candidate as like the upgrade path. But it's not something I get to keep because the GPU is so low in quantity worldwide that it's not even something that we get to keep here. So I'm perfectly fine with sticking to the 2080 Ti, even though I realize that what I'm saying right now sounds like such privilege, but yes, I recognize the privilege. Plus, I don't really need the 3080 for video production. Very happy with 2080 Ti, and it's been super stable, especially with those studio drivers. Now, even though I have a dedicated machine for gaming, it's kind of awesome to have this hybrid machine with a 5800X, which the CPU is perfectly fine for any games that I throw at it, especially with 2080 Ti, while with the Threadripper, my temperatures were absolutely under control with all the water cooling, but the CPU just wasn't as fast as I wanted to be for certain games that I do have installed on my main machine. I'm happy to be staying with AMD. The Threadripper machine was fantastic and it's right for the couple of years I've used it, but now it's time to move on to something slightly faster as a hybrid machine while keeping, you know, the GPU the same. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I'm Dmitry. Check out this other relevant content. Subscribe for more. I'll talk to you in the next video. Time to edit.